Hello everyone, my name is James McCool. We're going to do a breakdown of the two-game slate for the Monday main slate. We're going to be mostly focusing on DraftKings during this video using the models over at Paydirt, but a lot of this info and a lot of what I talk about is going to be able to be applicable over on FanDuel as well. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump in. What we're going to do is we're going to utilize some of the models over at Paydirt, the contest simulations, the optimizers, to get an idea of how to attack not only the two-gamer, but also each one of the showdowns to a slightly lesser extent. I think that it's much better to focus on the two-gamers. Showdowns are fine. I think that there's a lot of upside and edge to be found in two-gamers, but in Showdown. But when we have a two-gamer, I think that it's better to focus on that. So that's mostly what I'm going to be focusing on. But as usual, if you want to go over and use the models at Paydirt in a similar way that I use them when I do the Showdown seasons, you absolutely can. The contest sims that I use are available to users as well. It's not just me. So, go ahead and go use them. So let's go ahead and jump in. So I ran the NFL contest sims for the two-gamer on a small field, very sharp contest, which is what I usually run things on. And we can see a couple different things here. So if you haven't used the contest sims, it's going to show you the lineups that actually won the contest. It's going to show you a couple things like how often lineups won, what their GPP projection is, yada, yada, stuff like that. But here is winning frame statistics. So this breaks down based on the winning lineups, what the minimum salary used, the maximum salary used, and the average salary used. So this is really important. The average salary here is $49,246. There's a lot of data out there that shows that having anything above like 49.5 is going to get you heavily duped. So staying underneath that is going to lower your dupe counts. There's some other info here, like the ownership that you're aiming for is somewhere between 306 and 330-ish. Projections that you want to aim for, anything above 118 is going to be totally fine in terms of the averages. So that's some good info. And then we can get into the actual frames and exposures and stuff like that. So just looking at overall, Lamar Jackson is well undervalued. At 29% projected ownership, his exposure in winning lineups is 83%, which is really, really high. I think he's probably going to be somewhere in the 40 to 50% range or something, but that's still, with an exposure rate of 83%, like you're probably going to want to use him. If we jump into just QBs, the only QBs that ended up in winning lineups are Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, and Baker Mayfield. We don't get any Justin Herbert. And that makes sense based on projected ownership and stuff like that. But again, Lamar Jackson, just the clear and away best choice. Now, he is the most expensive for sure, but there's enough value to make it work, or at least according to the contest sims there. When we go into running backs, number one overall running back is J.K. Dobbins, 70% exposure, projected for 61% ownership. Not really that many crazy edges to be had in running backs. 9% best edge here, negative 10% for Bucky Irving. I mean, you can kind of make that up anywhere. If you play Lamar Jackson at QB, you can literally take on any negative exposure that you want here, and most of the negative exposure that comes with wide receivers. When we sort by best edge for wide receivers, we get Chris Godwin. 45% ownership, probably a little bit low. I think he's probably going to come in around 50 to 55. So his ownership is probably going to be efficient. But Rashad Bateman likely going to be too low. He does get 11% extra edge over what his projected ownership is. So he ends up looking like a pretty good play. If we look at the worst plays, Mike Evans, Mike Harrison Jr., and Sterling Shepard all have heavily negative edges here. Followed by Zay Flowers. But again, Zay Flowers, he still has a 39% win rate in the contest sims. So that's still really, really good. But somebody like Sterling Shepard at 1%, you can just fade him. Like, you don't need to worry about that. If you're doing MME, I would suggest staying around 20 and 15% for Mike Evans and Marvin Harrison Jr. Just come in under the field on them. When we look at tight ends, there's basically no big edges here, right? Hey, Damascus, I'm recording a video. That's very fun. Yeah? I'm not being mean to you. Why do you keep saying that? He's been saying I'm mean to him today. So anyway, not much edge to be had here. Will Dissly is the greatest edge, but these guys are pretty spread out. The ones that you want to avoid likely are Kolar and Tomlinson, but you can justify basically everyone else. So that's what we have for contest sims. Overall, like the thing that you're doing is you're stacking with Lamar Jackson. Contest sims really, really like Lamar Jackson plus Rashad Bateman. They don't like Zay Flowers as much, but again, he had a high exposure rate in winning lineups anyway. So it's not that big of a deal if you play him. The spots where you want to be under are Marvin Harrison Jr. and Mike Evans. Mike Evans, especially because he's dealing with an injury. And so that's a little bit worrisome. But let's go over into the optimizer. I did end up running the optimizer, just 100 lineups. Again, you can go and grab these. But I wanted to take a look kind of at where the exposures lie in cash optimals, right? So the most likely lineups to be used. And interestingly, Lamar Jackson does not show up that high, right? He projects for 32% projected ownership in smaller fields, but his exposure rate is only 26%. Like, people are just way undervaluing Lamar Jackson in this spot. They're way overvaluing James Conner. Like, you can do stuff like this. You can use kind of like a pseudo contest sim approach here. James Conner projected at 50% ownership, only showing up in 25% of the cash game optimals, and doesn't have a high positive edge in the contest sims. Probably want to be light on James Conner. But what I wanted to show is Zay Flowers, J.K. Dobbins, Ladd McConkey with Derrick Henry and Chris Godwin. Like, this is the basic combo that everyone is going to start with. And avoiding any of these guys is going to give you a really good leg up on the field and allow you to start building in some dupe mitigation, right? And some relative value in a two-gamer. The other thing that I wanted to note here is that Will Dissly shows up in 37% of cash optimals, but is only projected for about 15% ownership. So doing things like playing Will Dissly instead of Ladd McConkey, or locking in Lamar Jackson, going with like this core, and then also playing Will Dissly, right? Like, stuff like that. That's how you're going to be able to find edge in this kind of a contest for the two-gamer. Based on everything that we just saw, I do really think that Lamar Jackson is where you start. There is an opportunity cost there. I think that people are going to be jamming in Baker Mayfield. He's going to come in with some pretty good ownership, I think. But for the most part, man, Lamar Jackson is just like kind of where you start everything. I don't really like Lamar, or I don't really like Kyler Murray, and frankly, the projection and the expectation for Justin Herbert is just too low. So I'm really not into those guys. I think you just start with Lamar Jackson, pair him with Zay Flowers or Rashad Bateman. I think that both of those are good options. I think that if you can go Lamar Jackson with Derrick Henry and Rashad Bateman, that gives you a really, really nice floor with a pretty good ceiling and relative value combo. And then outside of that, you're just really filling in the blanks. Like, if you go Lamar Jackson, J.K. Dobbins, Derrick Henry, Will Dissly, and Rashad Bateman, that's a great base. You can kind of do whatever else you want with that. Let's quickly hit on some flex cores for the two showdowns. I'm not going to go over the full contest sim stuff here. If you want that, you can go over and find it over on the site, but I did want to go over these. So the flex core for the first showdown is Zay Flowers, Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson, and Chris Godwin. As we just talked about with all of this, I do think that it's important to have an understanding of how to mitigate dupes, especially in Showdown. And this is kind of where you start with it. If you know that those four guys are going to be used in basically every single lineup, just get off one of them, and then you can build mostly however you'd like. Just for this first showdown, what I would suggest based on these numbers, get away from Zay Flowers, replace him with Rashad Bateman, and make sure that you keep your total salary under $49,500. That's how you approach the first one. For the second one, did I do this right? Yeah, I did. Yeah. Okay. This flex core is J.K. Dobbins, James Conner, Kyler Murray, and Ladd McConkey. Right. So in this one, we saw from the two-gamer that J.K. Dobbins is just really, really valuable. James Conner is not quite as valuable. We should expect for one of these running backs to get there, though. So what I would say for this one, you're very likely going to be fading one of J.K. Dobbins or James Conner based on this flex score. The question of which one you fade depends on which team you think really wins. Both Dobbins and Conner are going to be game script dependent here. So with the models liking J.K. Dobbins so much more than they like James Conner for the 2-gamer, I have to go with that side. I would suggest fading James Conner in the second showdown and going with J.K. Dobbins instead. So this has been a quick breakdown of how to use the models over at Paydirt to make some decisions for this 2-gamer and for each one of the showdowns. If you don't already have a subscription over at Paydirt, you should grab one. NBA season starts up tomorrow, and all of the models are getting rebuilt right now. We have some really cool introductions, some cool use of the seed frame technology for NBA, which I think is going to be fun for optimizer purposes. And I just think that everybody would do themselves a service by grabbing a subscription over at Paydirt. It really is the best value in the industry. So if you want to get better, if you want to learn how to actually play DFS and have the tools to do it, go grab a sub over at Paydirt. Thanks so much. I hope that you guys grab some trophies, and I will talk to you in the next one.